Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Last Call podcast, the podcast companion to my weekly Star Wars column, The Cantina. I am Kyle Malone, and I'm joined today by Cam Clark. Cam, how's it going, buddy?
Hey, not too bad, Kyle. How's you?
Doing all right. It's been a interesting week for me in a lot of ways, including having to watch yet another bad Star Wars movie.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Yep. I would say things will get better from here, but I know that's not quite true for you.
We are finally swinging to where there's more good than bad, though. After getting these three out of the way, there's one movie left that I absolutely hate, and one movie that I'm conflicted on. The rest of them are pretty decent so far, So we're definitely
Till we get towards the end again for me, but
yeah. So today we're going to be talking about Revenge of the Sith, Episode 3. Came out in 2005 and was the end of the what we call the prequel trilogy. A lot of mixed feelings on this movie. I know there's a lot of people who came up with the prequel trilogy as their Star Wars, that this is their Empire Strikes Back. This is the best of the best. There's a cool, quote unquote, cool lightsaber fight and actually decent opening scene that we'll get into here in a little bit. But this is their Empire Strikes Back. It's darker and grittier, and I mean they're wrong, but everybody's entitled to their feelings.
I agree.
So talk to us a little bit about how it was going into Episode 3 for you when it was first announced and when you went and first saw it.
Well, I mean, we knew that this was the point it was all building towards, So what we knew of the kind of prequel trilogy from the old trilogy was sort of everything that was in Episode 3. So I remember feeling going into it that I just didn't think that they had enough time in that movie to tell that full story properly, that the story should have got there quicker in the previous two.
Yeah.
To allow them more room. And it actually is a very fast-paced movie, which isn't always a bad thing, don't get me wrong, but still, I think there's too much time spent on inconsequential rubbish in this movie and not enough time on the things that really matter, which really is the relationship between Obi-Wan and Anakin. I think more so even than Anakin and Padme. It's that breakdown of the friendship and the sundering of these two and everything that happened to then take us to the point in the galaxy that we are in sort of 20 years later when A New Hope kicks in. So it had a lot to live up to, I think. And whilst I kind of did, I remember at the time think, yeah, this is a little better than the previous two. However, I think that was just that because of the content that was included in it, it had to be, because it incorporated so many of those fan moments that, we'd been waiting to see, that it kind of had to be. But I still think it's way, way, way far from what it could have been. Way far.
Yeah, absolutely. I went and saw it in theaters for preview night, like I had the other two films, and as I have every Star Wars film except for Solo, and of course the original trilogy, because I'm not old enough, but I'm
not old enough.
I didn't see Solo on opening night because I had no interest in it whatsoever. It was, we'll talk about that next month. But I did go see this preview night with a group of friends, and I remember kind of walking out feeling like, that was more enjoyable than the past movies, but it's still not what it could be. It's not what it should be. I still feel slightly cheated,
Yeah, definitely.
So that was kind of my feel on it. I did love the trailer, and the Emperor's voice, Lord Vader, yes, Master, rise, and the music, and I
actually remember this. He doesn't actually say rise in his Emperor voice at all in the movie. It was just a trailer only thing.
I think maybe that's where the Russos got their trailer only stuff from.
Well, yeah, I did actually read something about that McDermott had recorded run about Revenge of the Sith, loads of extra sort of just sound bites and things of him laughing and making strange noises that and there was a report of someone was there to kind of watch a part, and he was afterwards he was just doing all these crazy recordings. It was because of the wind. See, when they break the window, I know we'll get to this later on, but see, when they break the window, they had a wind machine and everything like that. They had to re-record all the lines for that bit.
ADR.
And then while he was there, he was recording all these extra bits as well. So people have already theorised that perhaps that's where they got the laugh from. Because see, I think, I don't know, we're getting into what was it? The Rise. I nearly said the Return of Skywalker.
Yeah, the Rise.
And
of
me
Skywalker.
And Seth were just saying every time we type it this week, we want to type Rise of the Skywalker, and then you have to kind of remind yourself, no, it's the Rise of Skywalker. But yeah, I think it might be a bait and switch type scenario, and that if he's in it, it'll be very marginal, and that they might be using Matt Smith after all as the young version of the Emperor.
Like the clone body type idea?
Something like that, some sort of resurrected idea, and that he won't physically really be there that much. But we shall see.
See. We'll see. We'll get some more trailers and some time. I'm sure we'll talk about it on Los Fanboys podcast, which you guys can find on wherever you find podcasts at, and that's what you're listening to this podcast on as well. Go ahead and make sure, everybody, that you like, share, and subscribe to the Los Fanboys podcast channel. This is where you're going to hear LRM Ranks It, Breaking Geek Radio, Last Call, as well as Los Fanboys. So make sure you guys are doing that. Share it with your friends and family. What were your feelings for this movie in general before you watched it this week? And let me, for everybody that might not have seen or listened to the other podcasts, maybe I'll learn how to talk. We rewatch these movies the week we record these podcasts. So that way the wounds are fresh in the case of the prequel trilogy, and the feelings are raw. And so, yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen it, but go ahead and tell us, when was the last time you saw this movie before this week, and how you kind of felt about it before this week's viewing?
Well, I've probably seen this one a bit more recently than the other prequels, because my son thinks it's one of the best ones, and he kind of, well, I suppose he's even too young to have grew up with the prequels. He's a little bit after that, but he's always liked Revenge of the Sith. So a couple of times he would watch it in video, I would be there, etc., etc. So I suppose I probably have seen it more recently, and yet I found myself thinking that I've probably watched it less times than the other two prequels in total, because I was watching them leading up to it, and then after Sith, it was kind of like, that was what the point I realised that the prequel trilogy just really wasn't that good overall. I had convinced myself they were going to pull all these bait and switch sort of things in Sith, and it was going to be completely different from what it was, and it just didn't live up to my expectations, I suppose. And then I realised, but it's still better than the previous two, so that says it all about the prequel trilogy. So probably just a few years ago, and how I felt going into it, I would say this time was that I'm going to enjoy this slightly more than I have Attack of the Clones and The Phantom Menace. I'm not really sure I did. I still felt it a bit of a chore to watch, if that makes sense.
No, definitely. The last time I saw this, I think, was around 2010. I have this vague memory of watching it while I was on an extended trip with what I do for a living, and I think I watched it in 2010. I remember liking this one more than the other two, of course, in the prequel trilogy, but still, like I said, feeling cheated. There were things that I absolutely hated. I hated the red eyes of Vader. I hated the transformation of Palpatine so quickly with Force lightning, and of course the horrific no at the end of it. I hated that from the first time I saw it. So
some bad moments that I hated right away as well.
Definitely. But let's go ahead and get into this movie. I actually like the opening to this movie, and I liked it when I watched it this week as well. The CGI is incredibly dated, but I found myself really enjoying that opening space battle scene.
What I would say though is I think it is actually my least favorite opening crawl of all the Star Wars movies so far. I think it's actually pretty badly written. You know, there are heroes on both sides. Evil is everywhere. You know, that kind of language. It feels very much like it's been written for very young children, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely.
You know, especially the film that should theoretically be the darkest Star Wars film.
Yeah.
I just didn't think that quite fit with things for me. But yeah, the opening I actually really enjoy up until the point that they start speaking.
Yes.
And again, we have the same old dialogue issues, but as an opening shot in a Star Wars movie, it's actually really cool because it's just this, you know, one continuous shot of the ships flying through, and there's this big battle going on round about, you know, and it is actually quite good. It really is until they start talking. This is where the fun begins. You know, that kind of thing. That it kind of falls away from there.
I will say this. I watched, I did two things. I watched the Blu-ray version of it this week, but I also took a look at my old DVDs. And I've got an old 720p TV in my office, which is still better than standard definition, but not quite as good as, you know, my 4K downstairs or my 1080p at 120 hertz in the bedroom. And I looked at the Blu-ray versus the standard definition from the DVDs, and believe it or not, the dated CGI looks better on the DVD than it does on the Blu-ray.
Yeah, I think it would do.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they were developing things to be passable to the eye of the technology at that time. You know,
and it does.
And I think the difference that the old trilogy has is because it's actual models in film, that when you up the resolution, apart from the models looking a bit more modelly, they don't look particularly any more dated, I don't think, than the actual CGI does. CGI definitely dates quicker, I think, than live. What am I trying to say? Real sets.
Yeah. No, definitely. And that's one of the biggest things you can tell in even if you take into account technology limitations of the time, comparing, you know, past movies, like I said, to the OT and of course to the sequel trilogy, you can see how great practical effects work and how much they can really add to a see. And it's funny you mentioned that the scene's great until they start talking. You're absolutely right. One of the things I really noticed this viewing was Anakin sounds so bored while talking in battle. Like Obi-Wan's actually got some emotions, you know, he's got some energy to what he's saying. Anakin's just like, you know, oh, there's things shooting at us. Maybe I should turn around and go help those guys.
It's typical Christensen, isn't it? And I think, you know, it's proved the point. I think they hired him for his angry face, because as he gets further into the dark side, I think his acting actually improves a little bit in this film. Whereas the kind of good guy and friend of Obi-Wan, he just doesn't seem to be able to pull off, because as we've said many times previously, chemistry, they just don't have it. No. I actually think that one big criticism I've got in this scene is from that point when they start talking till they get to General Grievous's ship, takes far too long. If you look at where they are and how quick they're getting, it's like, do you remember Monty Python and the Holy Grail, when Lancelot just keeps running and he doesn't get any closer, and then he keeps running again, and then all of a sudden he's just there, stab, you know. That's what this feels like to me. And we are going to have a Monty Python theme through this, because there's a few other points that I think would fall straight into a Monty Python movie for me.
Interesting. I didn't even think about comparing this to any Monty Python movie.
They shouldn't.
No, they should, definitely.
And that just, honestly, it feels like the Lancelot scene to me. It goes on too long.
Yeah.
And it does actually get a little bit boring as well. You know, that would have been much more kinetic if they just sharpened that all up and got there quicker. It would have,
they have too many. I thought they had too many moments where there were too many obstacles between them and Grievous's ship. You know, at first it's the
You
Vulture
decide
droids,
which
and then
ones
it's
to
the
use,
Buzz
so-
droids, and then it's let's go and save the clone fighters, and that there was just too much. You should have had the Vulture droids or the Buzz droids, and then gotten to Grievous's ship. You could have cut the other stuff out, and you know, kept one of those obstacles.
Definitely.
So they do make it through all these obstacles, and we get some incredibly lame, and this is a running theme throughout this movie, well, throughout the prequels, really, is the slapstick droid stuff. From the Vulture droids to the Buzz droids to R2, you know, R4, and or Obi-Wan's, you know, droid, when it loses its head, it's still screaming, oh, yeah. It's ridiculous how much slapstick goes into it. But we finally get over to Grievous's ship, and there's a horrible look to the fact that the only real things on screen are Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor and the lightsaber hilts. Everything else is digital. The droids are digital. The ships are digital. The background is digital.
It doesn't feel like they're ever in any peril, does it? It feels like they're standing in front of a green screen just twirling their hands round about. Yep. And then they animate droids to, you know, it's almost like it's so easy for them. You know, there could be 10,000 droids there, and it just wouldn't have mattered. They just nothing can touch them at all. You know, there doesn't feel like any peril. You know, that they've got into the flagship of the enemy, and they've got to, you know, it would have been cooler for them to have to sneak through, you know, to get where they wanted to go or something like that, because there was so many droids that they just couldn't face them on their own. You know, that would have been far more, I think, engaging than what we got.
It would have definitely made sense.
They don't seem to have a plan. They seem to know that we need to have this part here where they face Dooku. Then we need to introduce Grievous, so we need to have a part where they come to Grievous. Then we need to get rid of both of them, and then we need to get back off again. And you just feel like this, even if the dialogue was great, I don't think that bit would have been that good, because the actual concept at the storyboard just doesn't really work for me.
No, I can definitely see that. It's a lot of that slapstick that I was talking about happens here during this rescue. I mean, everything from Obi-Wan calling R2-D2 on the comm link, and the two battle droids hearing it, and then they're like, oh, what was that? Like, obviously you can clearly hear
and here's the thing,
they're like, don't worry about it, go back to work.
Here's the thing I noticed as well. Do you remember when they brought in the new battle droids in like Attack of the Clones? We didn't really hear them speak, and you thought, oh, these are actually some badass battle droids for once, you know. Nope. And then when they make them speak for the first time in Revenge of the Sith, hey, stupid little astro droid, you know what I mean? What? Could you not have just got a man to record that voice? Like a robotic voice, something threatening, like, you know, have you never seen Doctor Who? You know, it's pretty campy, but the scary thing about the Daleks is their voice, not what they look like, you know, so.
Even the Cyberman voice would have been better.
Yeah. I mean, just not some little kid, like, just asking their mum for a peanut butter sandwich, you know? Hey, Mom!
It goes to show that Lucas really was making these movies, like you said, for little kids. Mm-hmm. Like he had this all ages appropriate original trilogy, you know, but when he went to the prequels, he went just straight up Ewok all over the face of the prequel trilogies.
The problem is that the prequel trilogy is a tragedy. It's supposed to be the dark trilogy, because ultimately everything goes to shit.
Yeah.
It all ends in a bad note with only one small glimpse of hope. The Jedi are completely wiped out, other than two and a few other ones that appear every time they want to make a new game or a TV series. You know, oh, there was another Jedi that survived. Yeah, well, it's fine. You know, they reversed the thing. You know, so it's fine. You can have other people surviving, but it should have been really, really dark, and it should have just been this turn to the dark side and this loss of hope. And to do this trilogy in a very kiddie-focused way was the wrong move from the start, and it definitely is what hurt this trilogy overall.
Yeah. No, definitely.
And talking about the slapstick thing, the next Monty Python part I'm going to mention is when the two droids, they're going up the lift, and the two droids are standing over Anakin, and they see the lift coming up, and Anakin jumps off to get in, and the two droids just go, uh-oh. But do they pick their head back? No. They keep looking down for... I mean, these are supposed to be machines that think quick. I've just got in my head this kind of conversation going on between them in super fast time. Like, oh, dude, we should really pull our heads up right now. Yeah, we could do. But the target's down there. Maybe we should shoot first, then get back up. No, man, we're definitely going to die here. We should really pull our heads up right now. Okay, let's do it together. 1, 2, and then, that would work in a Monty Python film, if it's just these two characters having some crazy dialogue, but it doesn't work in a Star Wars film, for Christ's sake.
No. It's funny, I know you guys call elevators lifts generally where you're from.
We do,
but in Star Wars, they're actually called lifts or turbo lifts. They're not called elevators in Star Wars until this fucking movie, and Anakin keeps calling them fucking elevators. I actually wrote that down in my notes. I was kind of upset about that. I think I had forgotten about it until this viewing. We do get to finally see the soon-to-be Emperor Palpatine's been captured, and he's being guarded by Dooku. And I did not realize...
Make that much sense, does it, really?
No, not really.
Why they've pulled all this off, what the kind of purpose of it was. I know they kind of... There is a clone... Do you remember the... Tarkovsky, I think his name was.
Yes.
Gennady Tarkovsky, Clone Wars. And there was a bit showing you the lead up to that before the movie came out, actually, so you could watch that before the film came out. And Grievous himself looked actually quite badass in the casting, and then he's just such a disappointment in the film. But it still never really explained what was Palpatine's real goal for that at that time. Was it just because he knew Anakin would be the one to rescue him? He knew that he wanted to test them against Dooku. If, as far as he knew, Dooku might beat them. It just didn't make much sense to me. I don't get why he did that. But anyway, it happens.
Yeah, it does. It happens. And believe it or not, though, I will say this: the CGI they use to try to hide the fact that Lee, there you go. There's so many: Christopher Lambert, Christopher Lee, Chris Pine, Chris Evans. But yeah, Christopher Lee. The CGI over his face to kind of hide that it's not him looks atrocious. Like, you could have used a Halloween mask. I don't know if you caught it this viewing, but you could have used a Halloween mask and done a better job. Yeah. But it does. The CGI looks really bad here. But I will say this: I think the lightsaber fight with Dooku this time around is better than the lightsaber fight in Episode 2, as far as like the actual fight choreography when the lightsabers are when they're attacking each other. I think it's much better than the fight in Episode 2, and I honestly think it's better than the fight between Obi-Wan and Anakin at the end, because those two motherfuckers are just dancing, and we'll get there.
Too, man. I am 100% with you on that.
Nice.
Absolutely. So yeah, I actually think it's the best fight in the entire prequel trilogy, save possibly the Duel of the Fates one with Darth Maul and Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan.
Nothing tops Obi-Wan.
It's just good. It's to the point, and there's more that there almost seems like more dialogue in that fight than there is in the entire Obi-Wan Anakin fight as well, which just doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. There's actually some good sort of prodding, the way Dooku says, you have fear, you have hate, but you don't use them, and all that sort of stuff. My only kind of one criticism is that Obi-Wan gets took out like a punk, doesn't he? And then she's like, "Pooh, get away!" And the thing comes down and crushes him, And what I don't get as well is Palpatine's face when he's like, "Ooh," as if, "Oh, that was bad." And when Obi-Wan kills the droids, he's like, "Yeah."
Yeah, that made no sense whatsoever.
Why have they got him doing that? He should be just sitting there looking, no emotion at all, just waiting to see what happened.
I do have the balcony falling when Dooku pushes the balcony down onto Obi-Wan. I have that in my notes that there's no way, the way it actually lands and then hits him and then pushes his body forward, there's no way that guy was ever going to walk again with his own legs.
No.
It was not going to happen. That would have destroyed his legs and his hips.
Anakin would have probably had to amputate both legs at the thigh and just strap him over his shoulder, right?
Yeah, even if you could lift the balcony off and get his body from under there, the way it hits and it actually pushes on him, that means there was some force to it. That dude's not walking again of his own accord. He's going to need some robot legs. He's definitely going to need some robot legs.
Lift shafts and all that sort of stuff. But
exactly.
It was just they had to get rid of Obi-Wan to do what they did. So that was the way of doing it. I can think of, off the top of my head, many different ways. He could have pushed him in a chamber, hit a button that sent Obi-Wan into a different room, or given him something else to do to get back in at the same time, and by the time he gets back in, or Obi-Wan could have simply just flew up, hit his head off a bulkhead, get knocked out. That would have worked very easy. I mean, that can happen to a Jedi. They just hit their head and get knocked out. So there's so many different ways they could have did that, but they picked that stupid scene. But it's the only down point in that fight, because I do like that fight.
Definitely. But they rescue Anakin kills Dooku, beheads him, and which we've just kind of
criticisms I do.
What's that?
I do have another criticism of that, but it's after Anakin kills Dooku. And I like, the whole Emperor do it and all that sort of stuff in his head. That's good. But then afterwards he's like, I shouldn't have done that. It's not the Jedi way. He was an unarmed prisoner. And then Palpatine's got to sort of convince him that it's okay, don't worry about it. Stop being a pussy. You know what I mean? It's all right. That part didn't work for me, the immediate regret, kind of thing, because he wanted to do it. I don't think he would have had that instant regret. And Dooku is 100% a villain as far as Anakin's concerned at this point as well. So I think it would have been better for him to see that as actually justified, and that would have helped with his turn further down the line, rather than to feel that guilt and remorse for it. Because would you really feel remorse? If that was World War II and you just took the head off Hitler, would you feel remorse about it?
No.
I don't think so.
No, it would have been a good point to have him have some remorse later on when Obi-Wan asked, well, what happened to Dooku?
Possibly, yes. And then it would be more that it's less that he's got remorse, it's that he's lying to his friend about what happened. I mean, that was a scene that should have happened, them talking about what happened, and they just don't have that. There's no time. They just don't get enough, and this is a criticism for later on, but they just don't get enough time as friends in this film. Yeah. And it's the first, because they wasted the whole of Attack of the Clones not making them friendly at all. You only get this very small portion of time to see them as friends before they split up, and when they come back together for the next time, they're dire enemies. And because of that, you just don't feel the proper emotion that you should do at that point.
Definitely not. So they rescue Palpatine. We get some more slapstick stuff with R2-D2 and droids going all the way to we get to General Grievous, right? They get recaptured. All of them get recaptured during this
rescue. Is a stupid way for them to get captured as well.
Yeah,
activate
the
ray shields. Wait, we're smarter than this. No, clearly you're not smarter than this, but clearly the directors are not smarter than this as well. No. There's just a corridor where they can stop anyone, but they have never used it once up until that point.
And never used it again in the OT or the.
Not brief this guy. This is to listen, mate. This is what the score actually is, right? Dooku's there, but he's not going to be there in about 20 minutes. So, and I'm going to be needing to get out. So you just let us go on our merry way, and I'll remember this later on. Okay? Yeah. Yes, Master Sidious. And away you go. It doesn't. Sense, and it just puts them into a confrontation with Grievous, to me, which was just to introduce the new bad guy, because now we've got the Dooku, we have to create someone else to lead the bad guys, or else we have no actual antagonist. And it was a way to get Obi-Wan away from Anakin as well, which is, I get that, you have to do that in this film, but you could have created this guy in Attack of the Clones, or created something in Attack of the Clones that would then carry on, a second in command that would just naturally take over after Duke being killed.
I like your idea of the fact that we should have gotten to an older Anakin in episode 1. That having the entire movie be a young Anakin was a bad idea. You know, your first act could have had a younger Anakin, and then we have a several year time skip in episode 1, and you could have had Maul still in episode 1, but you could have brought Dooku into episode 1 as well, and then episode 2 you get Grievous, so that way when you off Dooku,
you see Dooku turn to see the Palpatine actually turn him.
That
cool, and it would have been a kind of like mirror of what's about to happen to Anakin as well. You know,
absolutely. Excuse me, but the rescue scene from Grievous, it like you said, it was just to introduce the character. They easily get their lightsabers and escape their captors. There's a little bit of a lightsaber fight there with those guards with the electric staffs. One thing I noticed is
more CGI things.
Yeah, exactly. They cut off the head of one of those guards, and it keeps fighting. Later on in the movie, and I've got it in my notes, they cut off the head of one of those same guard droids, and it dies immediately. So no fucking consistency. Hate it. So you know, this Grievous escapes. He's all CGI. Every time there's no humans with him, it's all CGI. It looks atrocious. And we get the crash down on Coruscant, which visually was kind of cool, but whatever. What I did like is once they're on planet side, when then Obi-Wan and Anakin are on the transport, and he goes to drop Anakin off, and he doesn't want to go talk with the politicians and stuff. I actually liked their banter there. I think that's some of the best interactions they've had in all 3 movies.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with you. I do actually like the banter in that bit. And one of the things I was going to say is leading up to that bit as well, I think my favourite bit of banter in the entire prequel trilogy is when the ship breaks in half and Anakin just kind of turns round and he says, "I think we lost something." You know, that's actually good, you know, and Obi-Wan's like, "Not to worry, we're still flying half a ship." You know, that's actually quite good, I thought.
Yeah.
And then, as you say, the kind of banter between them when they're leaving is kind of parting as well. As, you know, you actually feel that there's more of a friendship there.
Yeah.
And maybe if they'd started working on that in Attack of the Clones, we would have believed it at that point. It wasn't enough. Those few scenes aren't enough to kind of take us to the point we need to. And of course, the next time they see each other is, I think, in the council chambers and or just before they go in there or something, and everything just starts to go wrong at that point as well with Anakin. So.
And we'll get to they have one more nice moment after the council chambers before they're bitter enemies, but this nice chemistry and this nice interaction between Christensen and McGregor, Anakin and Obi-Wan is immediately ruined when Padme shows up, and once again she has no chemistry with her male counterpart. Now I've only seen her in the Thor movies and the Star Wars movies as far as having a male love interest. I have not seen any of her romantic comedies. I did see Black Swan, in which case her romantic interest is another female.
I've never seen it.
You've never seen that one?
No.
There's some never mind.
All right.
We'll talk offline. But I don't know. My wife has never made me watch a romantic comedy with Natalie Portman. Have you ever seen any? Does she actually have any chemistry with anybody on screen?
The only time I've ever seen her where I was particularly impressed, and I've not seen Black Swan, I know I've heard she was good in that, was the first one, Leon. You know, she was pretty good as a child actor in Leon. I haven't seen, what's that one, the new one she did? Is it, it starts with like something like exterminate, extinguish. That's not the right.
I know which one you're talking about.
What's the word?
It's like science fiction, and there's like an alternate
it's like a
dimension or
horror
something.
type thing.
Yeah.
I've actually read the book for that, and I wasn't that impressed. So but I thought the movie was from. I've only seen little bits of it, I have to say. It seemed okay. I've not been able to sit down and watch it, but I've heard she's pretty good in that as well. So.
Maybe
and she has some
does
love scenes in that because if it follows the book, it's all about her and her husband
Like he disappears first, and she goes to
and
find him
then
or some
she
shit.
finds him, but it's not really him. And there's this whole kind of thing that builds up, So I'm assuming there must be some love scenes in that with Oscar Isaac, I believe, played him in the film. So
yeah, but she sucks with him. She sucks with Christensen. Absolutely no chemistry.
However, I actually do think her acting in this one gets better after that point a little bit, when she's a little bit more relaxed and until the point where things go really bad and she starts to become really naive and silly again after that. But there's just a little moment in between, when they're discussing things in the balcony, and where she actually feels a little bit more natural to me. But when she's in the scene you're talking about, where she tells Anakin she's pregnant, and his reaction as well, just they don't sell it, do they?
Nope, not at all. And talking about other things that aren't sold very well, we get past some stuff, and we get to the Jedi Council scene, and it feels clunky. It really feels clunky. Like everything about them feels clunky. What do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't think we ever really get to see, for example, Samuel L. Jackson do anything with his character. He's just told to do the most simple things, and he's happy to be there swinging a lightsaber, so he's cool with that. But when you've got an actor that good, give them something to do. And I actually thought Mace would this is weird, but I was part of the theory people who believed that Mace Windu was secretly working for Palpatine on the side, back in Attack of the Clones, and I thought this would be a really good twist in the whole purple lightsaber, although it was just because he asked for it. Might have been, because it's a bit blue, it's a bit red, and there was loads of things where, which now just seems like bad writing for his character, but I thought might have been little clues as to where things were going. So I was actually pretty disappointed to be one of those folk that, and lots of other people were saying, you're absolutely crazy, that's not going to happen. But, I'd planted my sail on that one. I really had. So I just don't think he's given very much to do. And in general, as you say, the Jedi Council scenes, it's just all very stuffy, straightforward. And
it follows, that scene follows Anakin being told by Palpatine, hey, I want you to go be my personal representative. And it's like, that was okay, I got it. You're finally seeing Palpatine really push, now he's no longer nudging, now he's really starting to push and heavily influence Anakin. But you get to this Jedi Council scene, and when they're like, yeah, we allow you to sit here, but you're not going to be a master. And still Christensen can't muster enough emotion. Facial, maybe he had a little bit of a decent facial, like acting, facial gestures. What's the word I'm looking for? Body language. There you go. Yeah. He had some decent body language. But again, his voice acting just, it doesn't match. It doesn't sell. And one thing I also wrote down in here, and it's not as bad in this scene as it is in other scenes, but it's been a problem throughout the whole prequel trilogy for me, the Yoda speak. Yoda's backwards talking was, compared to the prequels, in the OT, it was a minimum. In the prequels, he does nothing but backwards talk. And it grates on me.
I don't think his dialogue's very well written, and I don't think it's necessarily the backwards talk. It's just that in the OT, it was like everything he said had a purpose. It was very well written in terms of, to use to convey a message with as little words possible. And they kind of just lost that a little bit in the prequel trilogy. And although Lucas understood how to write backwards talk for Yoda, he still doesn't give him much good. But where's all that wisdom that he had in the old trilogy? That ancient wisdom.
They spent it all on fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, and hate leads to suffering.
Suffering.
They just wasted it all.
I love the way his voice just cracks a little bit when he's suffering.
But yeah, I think after that, there's a lot of like dead space, but the next like big scene that I wrote down was the infamous Darth Plagueis scene, Anakin and Palpatine sitting at the Aqua show. And I actually like that scene. I think it builds some decent atmosphere. It's of course completely wasted in this movie, and it doesn't have a really fulfilling results. But that scene in and of itself, I liked it. What'd you think of it?
I would probably say the Darth Plagueis scene is my favorite scene in this movie. It's ruined a little bit by Christensen's acting, but this is just classic McDermott chewing on the scenery for me. You know, he is absolutely in his element at that point. He's the reins are off, you know, and he's, as you say, he's pushing towards his sort of end game at this point, and he's taking risks, and therefore his performance it just gets better for me. You know, I love that whole, you know, have you ever heard the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? You know, and there's so many great memes in that to this day as well. You know,
go ahead, Cam, and give us that line. Have you ever heard the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? Go ahead and give it to us. I'm not as good
at doing Palpatine as I am as doing the Emperor, and we're going to talk about this later on because he has two voices. He doesn't use the same voice for the Emperor as he does for Palpatine. So I probably wouldn't do it justice, to be honest. Okay. There is one line I need to do for Seth that I promised him I'll do when we get to when he's the Emperor.
There's another one I was going to ask you to do as well, so maybe it ends up being the same one.
Is it by any chance the friend Obi-Wan Kenobi is now an enemy of the Republic one?
No, it was something a little bit different, but we'll get there.
We'll get there.
So yeah, we both agree that scene's pretty cool. And
the thing is, it's lore as well, right? Lore. What I want to see, and what they never seem to do, is really give us a good point of view for the bad guys. And what I wanted to see, and producer Rick McCallum told us it would be a 2.5 hour turn to the dark side. That's what he told us leading up to this. And we want, you know, fans wanted to see that more. You know, Palpatine and Anakin and the training of a Sith. You know, we've never seen a Sith ever be trained, not once. There's a little bit in The Last Jedi where kind of Snoke gives Kylo Ren a little bit of instruction, but really not much. They don't seem to ever impart any sort of teachings. It always happens off camera. And this was the kind of only little glimpse into that we get, you know, Palpatine talking about Darth Plagueis, and I love the way he's acting. We're still talking to this day about whether he is the apprentice that killed Darth Plagueis. It was his master, and I think they've made that canon now. But we didn't really know that at the time, and it was just the way he delivers a line. You know, the smile on his face when he says, "You know, how ironic," you know, and he could save himself from death. You know, he could save others from death, but not himself. And that, you know, I just love that scene, actually. It's really, really good. But Christian ruins it a little bit by just being this plank of wood. So you've got this really good performance from him, and then you've got a plank of wood sitting next to him just going, you know, is it possible to learn this power? Not a Jedi, you know. And that's a great line, but it's, you know, you've got one side of a great scene, and then one person's letting that down big time.
I will say this. Thankfully, Christensen doesn't actually have a lot of lines in this scene. But
no,
you're
it's
right.
more
when he speaks.
Palpatine just going ham, isn't it? You know, he's on it.
It's great. After this scene is when the you know, we're rounding second, heading into third, and that's a baseball thing. I don't know if you understood what I meant by that. I just completely forgot. You play cricket, which absolutely nobody understands.
I don't. You know, normal don't. And anyway, it was certainly not Scottish people. I mean, there is a Scottish, I think, national cricket team, but I mean, they're not even, you know, good enough to play against the other big teams. We don't do cricket in Scotland. No.
Okay. Every time I do think about cricket, though, I think of the 1990s Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie and Raph talking to Casey Jones like, cricket. Nobody understands cricket. You got to know what a crumpet is to understand cricket. It's great. So love that. But yeah, rounding second base, meaning that we're at the halfway point, heading towards third. before you're heading for the home stretch. It's baseball. You should watch baseball, man. It's great. Anyways,
Yeah, I'll get right on that.
We get everybody splitting off. You hear they're sending this Jedi to that planet, this Jedi to that planet. Obi-Wan gets told he's going to go to, what is it, Boz Pitti or whatever, to go hunt.
Utapu.
Yeah, there it is. Sorry. Who was it? I think it's Jedi Bass or Boss or something like that.
Or something like that. They mention it, but it's like somebody's on this place. I think that's like, I think that's mentioned a little bit earlier. Someone's there anyway, but I can't remember. None of the main guys anyway.
Right, but we're everybody's getting split up. We know that Yoda's going to go to Kashyyyk or Kashyyyk, however I always pronounced it Kashyyyk when I was, before we ever heard the word actually uttered on screen. Reading EU books, I said Kashyyyk. And I will say this, I wrote this note down. I was so excited to see Kashyyyk in this movie when it was announced that it was going to be a part of it. Because in the EU, the Wookiees, which are very dangerous creatures with these huge claws, and they're very, very strong, but they live very high up in the warshore trees.
There's like a lot of danger on the ground, isn't there? So the closer
you get to the ground, the more dangerous the creatures are. So if the Wookiees are way up here, what the fuck is down there? And there's even, I think it was in Knights of the Old Republic, I think maybe, had an element where you go to the lower levels of Kashyyyk and it's just super fucking dangerous. But here in this movie, we get this big lagoon scene and the Wookiees are down on the ground level. And the most dangerous thing is the fucking battle droids.
My head canon, I suppose, is that was just a coastal part. And obviously the Wookiees have got technology, so they can override beasties and stuff like that. But they would need ports and things, and you're still going to have lakes, lagoons, oceans.
Maybe
for all those trees, you have to.
It was
you can't. You need a water source. Somewhere.
Yeah, but then you got to worry about fucking giant Kashyyyk alligators and crocodiles and amphibians that could eat Wookiees. I mean,
I'm just thinking maybe they were further into the bush, and we're at a little sort of coastal bit because that's the best point for the droids to attack.
Stop giving them the benefit of the doubt, damn it. They suck. I know. No, I'm joking. It's good.
I totally get what you mean, though. And that's one bit of the EU I preferred the way it was done.
Yes.
To the movie. Yeah.
But we get all this splitting up. But before Obi-Wan leaves, you do get one more interaction with him and Anakin, where Anakin apologizes for his arrogance, and Christensen actually, for that moment, he sounds sincere to me. Did he sound sincere to you?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I appreciate
a strange point for that to come in, but
definitely.
And Obi-Wan gives him a bit of praise, which he's never really done.
Nope.
It's always been critical, and he finally gives him a bit of praise. But that's something that should have happened towards the last third of the Attack of the Clones.
Yeah.
For me.
And before Obi-Wan walks off, Anakin calls him Obi-Wan instead of Master or Master Kenobi. Yeah. He says, "Hey, Obi-Wan, may the Force be with you."
Well, I hate that they calls him Master at all in this, because the canon is he was made a Jedi Knight during the Clone Wars. So he is a Jedi Knight, although Master is an honor and an honorific title as well, and he's a Jedi Master. If they're going to be friends, you would really think he would call him Obi-Wan, wouldn't you?
I don't really mind it as much, because lots of knights, like in the EU at least, because let's face it, as far as Jedi interactions, that's really all we have a lot to go off of is the EU, and the Jedi, even Jedi Knights. Even Jedi Masters would refer to Luke as Master Skywalker.
But when any of them is friend,
Yeah, well, even like you're looking at...
They had a one-on-one relationship. They started off war together. They've been fighting as comrades, on the front lines together.
I can kind of understand that. But I can also understand them using the honorifics as well. But I did like that scene. Anyways, let's get to Obi-Wan Kenobi riding a fucking lizard.
Well, I really like Utapu. It's actually one of the things that I think's been sadly lacking in the sequel trilogy so far. All they've done is try desert planet, forest planet, snow planet, salt
this
planet.
Is a different type of planet. I like that. This is a bit
cool, and I like that. It actually it feels like lore building. There's going to be weird places. All right, sinkhole planet might not be there, but why didn't they just build with about the sinkholes? I don't know, but it actually works. It feels alien. It feels kind of exotic. I quite like that.
I'll give you that. But
and most of what happens on Utapau I quite like as well. As always, Obi-Wan's better when he's not got, McGregor's better when he's not got Christensen with him.
And not he's being dragged down by Christensen.
Yeah, and this is his best parts of this film for me.
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking this planet. I'm literally just talking about how atrocious it looks while he's riding the lizard. Like, they've got Obi-Wan Kenobi clearly sitting on like a mechanical bull. You know what a mechanical bull is, right?
Yeah.
Okay. He's sitting on a green screen mechanical bull being pushed side to side, and then this lizard is CGI'd in at a later point, and it looks atrocious. That's all I was saying. You're right. This is a pretty cool scene and good stuff with
I forgive it because I actually quite like that he's just jumping about in this dragon while Grievous is on, the bike kind of thing. And I do believe, I could be wrong here, but the digital storyboard for that whole sequence, I believe, was Steven Spielberg that did that.
Really?
He did one in it, and I think that's the scene he did, but maybe some of the fans listening to this will correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sure they will. But that's the one I think that he was involved in.
Okay. I actually did not know that. I'm not going to lie. When it came to the prequel trilogy, once we got DVDs to get behind the scenes stuff, other than the big documentary for episode 1, I never really watched a lot of the behind the scenes stuff for the prequels. So maybe I'll need to go back and watch some of that. You mentioned Grievous, and a lot of the stuff here on that planet. I do agree with you. A lot of it's pretty cool. How did you feel about the lightsaber duel with Obi-Wan and Grievous?
It's okay. I mean, I think I like the fact that they didn't make Grievous too strong, that they made it so that realistically he could have been beaten if Grievous had just said, attack him. But Obi-Wan was trying to draw him into a fight because he knew he would beat him, and he does beat him actually fairly easily, because there's I've been trained in your Jedi arts by Count Dooku, and Obi-Wan's like, yeah, but you don't have the Force, dude. So
yeah,
I can spot what you're doing before you even do it.
Because there's still enough living tissue in
he still has to
Grievous.
think about what he's got to do, and it's about seeing into the future, very micro moments, isn't it?
Yes.
And letting the Force kind of guide where you go. So all those spinning arms, and Obi-Wan just waits, and then boom, puts his one lightsaber in, and it just jams them all, straight away. So I quite like that fight, and I like that he wasn't really a match for Obi-Wan.
I did too. Well. I agree. This is
and I love when he jumps in and just goes, "Hello there." I mean, that's the best meme ever come out the prequels, isn't it? I mean, it's just, most of the time when I come on a podcast and somebody say, "How you doing, Cameron?" I'll just say, "Hello there." I use it in so many points in life. Somebody says, you go in and just say hello there to someone, and they're like, "What? Why did you put on a funny accent when you did that?" Because they don't get it, because they're not Star Wars nerds like us. But to me, it just it's a classic, actually.
Right before he actually has this fight with Grievous, Grievous does tell a couple of droids to attack and kill Obi-Wan, and this is where he drops the overhead thing. I don't know what the fuck it is, but it's big, it's heavy. He drops it on the droids, and this is where that droid gets up because only part of his leg is caught under, and he's going to attack Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan cuts his head off, and the droid dies right there, right then and there, dead droid. But that's the same droid that earlier had his head cut off.
So see, maybe you need the leg and the head together, though. That's the thing. See, so one part of the power's in the toe, and one part's in the eyeball. So if you cut off one, it still works. See, easily explainable to a Star Wars nerd, this, But, I mean, if there wasn't any other problems with the prequels, this is the kind of stuff I would defend to my dying day. If you can find a headcanon way round about it, then it is okay to do that, because they're not supposed. Why do they have sound in space? All of that. It doesn't matter.
Sound in space is literally just for the audience. It's not saying that sound. And this is an argument I had with Jammer.
Fireballs in space.
Legitimately the amount
goes in fire.
Think about the amount of oxygen that would be on the Death Star or Star Destroyer. Yes, there would. there would be a bit of it would go a lot.
Only
It would
inside it.
extinguish very fast, but there would still be some flame.
Quickly. It wouldn't be like burning on the outside as it fell, which it is.
No, it wouldn't be as spectacular as it is on screen.
Who cares? But... You know, that's the kind of, if you've got a good movie wrapped round about that stuff, you really don't care. You could pick the MCU apart on that in a million different ways, but you don't, because it's fun.
Because the MCU fucking pops. Let's get back to Coruscant and Big Papa Palpatine, which I always like calling him Papa Palpatine because it comes from Robot Chicken and the famous scene where he answers the phone, there's a video online, and I'm sure people can look it up. The guy acts out
in a cosplay.
Yes. I love that. Absolutely. But we get the big Palpatine reveal. I need you to record that for me. No, you get the big Palpatine reveal, and Anakin's like, oh, I'm going to go turn you in. So I'm going to leave you here to your own devices. I'm not going to have you guarded. I'm not going to use a comm link to contact the Jedi Council. You just told me you're a bad guy. I'm going to leave you alone. I'm going to go get some more Jedi, and then we're going to come back and arrest you. And that made no sense to me that Anakin would just leave him there. But you get more of the pushing and Palpatine saying, you know, only I can help you, blah, 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 blah. And we get to the big, you know, confrontation. Here's Mace Windu with a couple other Jedi Masters. And when Palpatine attacks, and I watched this, I actually rewound it a couple of times. When Palpatine attacks, you might be able to get rid of one of those Jedi Masters. Remember, these are council members. You might be able to kill one of these Jedi Masters with the speed and the surprise of the attack. However, there's two of them that he kills. They don't even lift their lightsabers to defend themselves.
No, they don't. It's just it's so badly shot. It really is.
Fucking choreography.
It's one of the worst parts. I mean, the fight between, I don't even particularly like the fight between Windu and Palpatine either. It's not that good, but it's not too bad. But that's because I don't think they ever really gave Samuel L. Jackson proper lightsaber training. You know, where like they did with McGregor and Christensen, and it just kind of it feels like that. But the way he kills everybody so quickly, it's just such a, you know, it really is sort of such a cliche, isn't it? That, you know, well, there's four of them. I'll kill the other three quick because they don't mean anything. They're just faces that have appeared in the background. They don't even have any lines, you know. And then we'll get to the proper one, which is versus Samuel L. Jackson because you know him.
No, definitely. No. And let's go ahead and talk about, you know, a little bit more about that Sam Jackson fight. Well, right before that, let's talk about something that could have been almost cut completely, at least cut down to about 10 seconds. All of that thinking that Anakin's doing, the long shots of him thinking and looking out windows.
Interesting. Because I like that.
Oh, really? You like how long it was? I'm not saying that you get rid of it all. I just don't think it should have been fucking, 2 minutes?
But I think that's if the problem with that is if you took that part out the film and put it in another film where loads of good stuff happened and where you really felt the hardship of Anakin's decision at that point, and you were willing him, you knew he was going to turn, but you were willing him, don't just go and see Padme, go and do something else, you know, that's what you should have been doing. And it was to give the audience time to think along with Anakin. I like the way that was shot, and because there's no dialogue in it, there's no really any issues either. It's actually, it works quite well, but the rest of the film doesn't work to make that part work, if you like. So I think we would have liked that part if there was a good movie wrapped around about it.
I thought about this, and what I would have done instead is I would have actually had us have Anakin walking, let's say, from his ship towards his room, and then stopping, turning around, going back to his ship, and having his conflict in the cockpit of his ship or his speeder before taking off and heading back. But I still would have cut it down to about 30 seconds, maybe 45 at most. That's just how I would have done it. I kind of see what you're coming at, and I will concede that if the movie had been better, that I may have been able to accept the longer scene. But given what it is, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more movement in his. I think the action of getting out of the ship and walking towards his quarters kind of makes it seem like I'm accepting my part, my role, but turning around and going back in it and having the conflict in the cockpit, maybe even slamming his fists against the controls. I don't know. I think that would have added a little bit to the scene.
Okay.
Maybe. But we get our big, fight with Windu, and Anakin comes in and he sees the Force lightning. And I'll say this.
Let me ask you one thing first, because this is something that's been discussed among Star Wars nerds. Do you think Palpatine purposely loses at that point, or did Windu just genuinely defeat him at that point? Just personal opinion.
I can see where he would purposefully lose so that a way he could, push Anakin over that very edge. If I die, you'll never learn the secrets to save Padme. So I can kind of see that. And if Mace Windu wasn't on the verge of killing Palpatine, does Anakin fully turn? I would say 60-40, he doesn't.
I've always had a kind of headcanon-y type theory, and it's backed up by the films, that the dark side, although the Jedi lose some of their ability, they can't see the dark side, they can't see the future in a way. As the dark side grows, the Sith get better at seeing the future. They can predict the bad things people will do quicker than the Jedi can, and that gives, at this point, it's got so bad that Palpatine really has that power, and he knows, because Windu's going to strike him down when he shouldn't, that's really not the Jedi way, and that he sees that ahead of time, you know, and he plans it all around about it. I just like to think of Palpatine being the master strategist,
I agree. And I think it all comes down to...
But it's a headcanon thing, it's how you interpret
this is... his plan is basically, this is the moment that Anakin goes over the edge and goes from Anakin to who I'm going to name Darth Vader. So Anakin does step in. He keeps. Actually, let me say this. I could not stand the way that the Force lightning alters the look of Palpatine. If anything, it should have burned him, not just made him wrinkly. What do you say?
This was, from day one when I saw it, my least favourite aspect of this film, because it made absolutely no fucking sense whatsoever. It didn't. This was how they were going to... Because we knew they had to explain how he got looking like he did, and that had to happen in this movie. To explain it in that way was so fucking stupid. I would have much rather that was his natural, but he'd been using a lot of power to conceal himself, to disguise himself. Yeah. And at this point, when he unleashes the Force lightning, that's gone. The shroud's gone, and you see the real Palpatine in it. And I'd just like to see that just almost immediately, this old grimace comes out. And Anakin wouldn't have really understood. He could have thought that's what caused it or whatever, and it helped for him to look, I'm old, I'm weak, I can't hold on, and all that sort of stuff, But I really hate the way they did that. It just made no sense whatsoever.
And my next least favorite part of that scene is the no, and the random yelling of unlimited power.
Was it? It says that's it. Power, unlimited power.
There you go. That's the one I wanted you to say. And it makes no sense for him to just be like unlimited power because I'm shooting Force lightning. If anything, he would say unlimited power when he takes over. What's up?
Again. My theory is that and this worked with the first 6 movies. I'm not sure how it works with the sequel trilogy yet, because it's not finished. Was that a Sith Lord draws power from their pupil? At the point Anakin made that choice, it actually shoots Palpatine up in terms of power level. He's now got the chosen one on his side, and he's actually tapping in to that power Do you know what I mean? To make himself stronger as well.
There at least in the EU, and again, because the movies really don't describe a lot, we kind of have to use some stuff from the EU to fill in, like you said, headcanon. There is the ability for Force users to tap into other Force users, but to that extent, I don't know. Maybe.
Well, it actually fits when you think about it, because the Jedi are all about passing on knowledge. The Sith aren't really. Their apprentice, they don't want to give them too much, you know.
No.
So their idea is that when you become powerful enough in secret and get another apprentice, which then, you know, someone for you to tether power off of as well, you can then go and tackle the master. Do you know what I mean? Because they always want a new apprentice before they can go and tackle the master, don't they? Unless, like, you're Palpatine and you kill them in their sleep, which, you know, you're thinking, why did the rest of them not think of that?
So yeah, another thing that really sucks about Palpatine's, you know, wrinkled face is the mask. Like, the actual makeup looks atrocious on the neck, and there's points where it doesn't even look like the neck was fully glued down to his chest, and it kind of bunches up in a way that it never does in the original trilogy.
I was going to say that compare the makeup in Return of the Jedi to Revenge of the Sith, and it is night and day. It's a kid's done it in Revenge of the Sith compared to, no offense to any of the makeup artists or whatever, you're working to when the director says, yeah, I'm happy with that, and you go, but you should, it didn't look like it at all. You know, it just didn't look like it, and I wanted them to look the same way he did in the old trilogy, because it is only 20 years apart, and when it's such a dramatic change as well, you know, back to what it was, I wouldn't expect him to. I wanted him to look ancient, you know. He's been around for a long time, you know, at that point, kind of thing. So yeah, the makeup was really bad. Yep. But I did say that when it comes to his voice, at the point he gets all wrinkly and everything like that, his voice obviously starts to change towards the more sort of emperor, you know, that kind of side of things. But there's like a weird tone to it, until the point he puts the hood over his head. Once he puts the cloak on, it actually settles down, and it's almost, from that point on, it's exactly the same as the Emperor's voice from Return of the Jedi. And it's a nice little change from one extreme gradually into the other. Actually, I really liked that. It's the way it was, like, the change was complete at that point with the voice, you know. And after that, I like him even better, because then he's the Emperor at that point, you know, and when he speaks in that voice, it just makes me think Star Wars, you know. Okay. That's the thing.
After his big transformation, he said, you know, you're now Darth Vader. How did you feel about the Emperor naming Anakin Darth Vader? Were you cool with that, or when you first saw it, or did you think that Anakin should have named himself, or that there should have been a different reason for the name?
I honestly don't really care that much.
Neither do I.
I didn't think he should have picked a name himself, really, because, you know, that would have felt weird to go, I'm going to call myself
Vader.
Darth Vader. You know, if they'd done that in Robot Chicken, it'd have been Darth Andrew. No, that's rubbish. That's rubbish. You can't do that. Darth Philip. I've always liked Philip, you know, and then he gets through all these things until he gets to Vader, you know. But no, I think it had to be the Emperor sort of giving him the name.
Yeah.
But I don't know how the Emperor decides in these strange names at times, but I don't know. Yeah, it doesn't bother me that much.
At least it's better than Sidious and Tyrannus and Grievous and
because we grew up. Yeah, it's always been there. You know,
Plagueis. It's a plague. I really did not like that part of these prequel movies. So after you know, he gives Anakin now Vader his mission. You know, hey, you're gonna go do this, that, and the other, and we get the Order 66 scenes, which are kind of cool. I mean,
but wait a minute before we get to that.
Go ahead.
I have to do the line for Seth. So, you know.
Oh yes.
Every single Jedi, including your friend Obi-Wan Kenobi, is now an enemy of the Republic.
I said to Seth I would do that one. And
although
I
will say that I'll say this to Seth,
obviously, to do all that, and tells him what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
My real issue with that is, like, how quick Anakin seems to, he's almost like
Just
there's half a
accept it.
smile on his face, and he's like,
Yeah.
I am now a baddie. Yes, master, I will do your bidding, master. It's too much of a switch too quick. I think there should have still been a bit of,
I'll give you that.
not quite there yet with
I'll
him
give you
that
that.
comes as the rest of the movie goes on.
And yeah, I can definitely see that. Next comes up our Order 66. And like I said, the Order 66 scenes are okay. All of them are decent. Of course, the graphics, the CGI look atrocious. You get the death of Kibi or whatever.
Yadi Mundi.
There you go, Mundi. You get the death of the Twi'lek, who I almost thought fell before she was shot, but there is one shot that hits her before she falls.
Baris Offie, I believe her name was.
Yeah, and you want to talk about exotic looking planets? How come we haven't seen that planet ever since? You know,
I know. Well, we did see it in one of the games, but
yeah. And then, of course, you have the betrayal of both Obi-Wan and Yoda, which the Obi-Wan betrayal, that's cool. I'm fine with that. I didn't really care for the Yoda scene. And I really didn't like how, Chewbacca was shoehorned into this movie, which is like the only reason Kashyyyk actually happens in this movie is so Chewbacca could be a part of it.
I still believe that Return of the Jedi would have been better if they had it be Wookiee slaves on Endor rather than, because they can fight and they're cool to watch, and they're proper warriors. But I didn't really feel the need to necessarily have Chewbacca there. We don't need to see Chewbacca to know that he's from the same group of people. I know that canon, he is old enough to be there at that point, but does he have to be front and center? I'm not so sure he does.
Whatsoever. Yoda escapes using this weird pod ship from the Wookiees, which is fine. It is what it is. Anakin, and this is one of my biggest issues, and if we had that time skip in episode 1 that you had talked about before, make sure you guys go back and listen to the other 2 podcasts for these prequel trilogy movies. I think we deserved more of Vader being the Rogue One Vader while he's killing these enemies of the Empire or enemies of the Republic for the next few minutes. Instead of the weak ass quick cuts and innuendo that we do get. The closest thing we get to that Rogue One hallway scene is when Vader does get to Mustafar and he slaughters the leaders, but there's no real resistance to him. He didn't really have a lot of guards or armed people shooting at him and trying to keep him from killing these separatist leaders.
Keep it PG-13. Remember, it was the only one of the prequels that hit PG-13. The rest, I think,
Rogue One's PG-13, and they kill everybody.
But that's now. I'm talking about back. At that point, he was definitely, they were almost trying to get PG again. Instead, they just embracing the fact that this one was going to be PG-13 anyway. So let's just go with it. The only thing they should have cut away from, and I actually don't like that it even happened, is the younglings. Don't you think that's just a bit too far for him to fall that quick? I'm not saying like, Darth Vader killed millions. People say he killed millions, he destroyed planets. Yeah, later on. But this is like he's just turned and he slaughters those younglings. I'm not sure. I would have liked to see still a little bit of remorse there, and maybe he walks away and you think, but then the troopers come in and just finish the job.
That's what I was going to say. I could have seen them using the troopers to do it, him to still have a moment where he kind of falters. I do agree.
Just couldn't quite take that step. This is the guy that's supposed to ultimately get redeemed. And that's maybe the most intimately bad thing he's ever done. That we see it's been at that point, and it's just after he turns. I think it's too soon. Again, if he had been Vader from the start of that movie, possibly, okay, but he isn't.
Yeah, no, definitely. 100%. Again,
what's the far time skip? It's just a slaughter, isn't it?
Yeah,
get a shot at his eyes. I know you don't like the eyes, do you?
No, I don't care for the eyes. I wish there had been somebody Yeah, definitely. And again, that's something that Lucas created that did not exist in the EU prior to. But
Well,
I
Emperor's eyes were a bit like that in Return of the Jedi.
they weren't as red. There wasn't really a lot of red. It was, yellowish, but
Yellowish, yeah, which
yeah,
I think they're
could have been
going
like age and
that, but they just don't quite hit the effect the same,
yeah, I
But again,
guess.
that feels like something that happens after years of dark side abuse, that
Not
Palpatine
just
was
like
having
an
to hide, not
instantaneous.
just like
Yeah,
a day ago I was a Jedi.
yeah, exactly. So we have Anakin killing the leadership there on Mustafar, and like I said, I wish there had been some resistance to him, and we could have gotten some of Anakin using all of his great, powerful Force abilities like he did in Rogue One, which is 17, 18 years after Revenge of the Sith, but still. We get the Senate scene. I'm going to rush through this one a little bit. The Senate scene where he declares, now we've got an empire. I don't think you would have that many systems supporting the conversion from a republic to an empire. Do you?
But remember, whenever these things have happened in history, they usually haven't always been done by force. Usually it's because he's got everyone on his side at that point. So people are either too frightened not to cheer, or they actually genuinely believe this is the best thing. So I'm kind of okay with it. It says like
I don't know. That's a big change.
Padme says, liberty dies with thunderous applause.
Right.
That kind of feels like communism and how that came in a way. There was this big,
but that took a little bit longer, and it took a little bit more talking. Hey, this is what I'm going to give you guys. It wasn't just, hey, I was attacked, and in order to keep
it's
you
one
guys
of these
from being
things.
Attacked,
If they had established all this throughout the other movies,
yes,
it works then. But
yeah,
it does feel too sudden for what we've had come before. But I don't think he could take the Empire by force. He had to do it by playing the game in the middle,
and
to get to that
saying.
Point. But we just see enough of that.
He just says, "Hey, I was just attacked 10 minutes ago, and I'm declaring myself emperor to make sure everybody else is safe." And everybody's just like, "Yeah, I don't buy that."
Yeah. I know it does. It feels too soon, but I feel like as if it should have been built up to that. As I've said about the previous movies, I'd like to see Palpatine manipulate other politicians a little bit more. Getting a little bit sort of West Wing even, and getting really, or better still House of Cards, in terms of that, you will do this or I'll do this to you, and even having these aides doing that and for him, the people
getting some certain systems on his side would have been important. Some worthwhile systems that you could name.
Yeah.
The next thing we see Padme and Obi-Wan talking, and fucking Natalie Portman doesn't even have any chemistry with fucking Ewan McGregor, who is the saving grace of actors throughout the majority of the prequel trilogy.
His worst bit in this scene for me.
Yeah.
See when he says, "I watched him."
Oh yeah, that acting is
killing younglings, and he puts his hand up to his beard,
But he's trying, at least. He's trying. I mean, he can't help what was written for him.
I mean, maybe it's just one of those ones where you go, cut, right, Ewan, just a little bit too much overacting there. It just needs to feel a bit, but you just, obviously, when he's got no chemistry with Portman as well, that possibly doesn't help him as an actor either, does it?
Probably not. But I'm on a let's hate on Portman day because, well, she really sucked in this movie. Before we talk about the final lightsaber fight between Obi-Wan and Anakin, because at the same time that happens, we also get Yoda and Palpatine. I felt that we should have cut out the lightsaber stuff between Yoda and Palpatine, and it should have just been a force battle. What do you think?
Yeah. I don't know, because I actually do think the lightsaber fighting between Yoda and Sidious is a little bit better than Yoda and Dooku was in Attack of the Clones.
Yeah.
You kind of feel that they would at some point when they get close enough whip out their lightsabers. It would have felt really poor not to, but I would have definitely liked to see it was at its best at the Wizards of Force battles. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I threw the whole Senate at him. The whole Senate, every bit of it.
So I would have preferred it to just be a forced battle. Yeah, I could kind of see maybe, like you said, if once they got real close, they whip out the lightsabers, but the focus should have been on a forced battle. And I really don't get the scene where where Palpatine's just sitting there laughing while Yoda's busy spinning this platform. And I don't know why he needs to spin it, because it's not like he's throwing it like a football and he needs some aerodynamicy. He's using the force to launch this thing. It
just shows you how cool it is that you can hold it in place and
spin
it around.
It was stupid and pointless. And Palpatine just sitting there laughing, and then, oh shit, he actually threw it at me. Was ridiculous.
It could have been so much better done. I think a more intimate battle between those two would have been better, rather than taking it out into the Senate and kind of doing the whole throw the Senate at him.
I do like where, Yoda catches the Force lightning and is able to withstand it, and then there's that, energy explosion when just so much of that Force energy has gathered in such a tight space. I like that. Yeah. I would have liked to.
I mean, something like as simple and shorter than that, and then having the fact that the troops all show up and Yoda knows he's missed his opportunity, whereas he kind of seems to resign himself to that he's not going to win this a little bit too early before the kind of troops show up for me. I would have liked to have seen that. Well, there was my opportunity to get him in my own. That's never going to happen again. He's never, he's going to have guards with him. I'm never going to have that kind of opportunity to kind of face him mano a mano again. That would have worked a little bit better for me.
And that leads to his line. And again, we're going to touch on that Obi-Wan and Anakin fight here in just a second. I want that kind of to be the last thing that we talk about. He gives that line of, "Oh, I failed. I must go into exile because I have failed." Look, I have been one of those people that defends, and I know you don't like Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi, but I've pointed out several times to Yoda and Obi-Wan kind of exiling. Obi-Wan also went to go watch over Luke, but he could have done something else. Luke was fairly well hidden. But I agree that
that's a failing of this movie for me in itself, because they had to really get into the fact of why Obi-Wan and Yoda had to wait for Luke to grow up to do this for them, why they couldn't do it themselves.
Right.
I would have liked a discussion there where, with the whole Qui-Gon thing and telling them, that the Force isn't with you, basically. And the Force is not with you to do this. The only chance for Anakin is his kids. That's the only, Qui-Gon telling him that the only chance for him is the kids. And if you don't defeat Anakin, if you don't, or maybe he doesn't use those terms, but that's the way they think about it, then you'll never stop the Emperor.
I've got something similar. One of the things I wrote in here is, why go into exile for failure? Yoda should have went into hiding, not exile, to plan to take, use the kids to take over. But because they did use it as exile, it completely makes sense for why, when Luke failed Kylo, that he goes into exile. And everybody that bitches, moans, and complains that Luke would have never gone into exile, Yoda went into exile, and technically so did Obi-Wan. So yeah,
but saying. My issue with The Last Jedi wasn't that. I actually didn't mind the
not necessarily you, but a lot of people couldn't stand. For me, why did he go into exile just because he failed Kylo? He would have went to fight him.
If you're going to break Luke Skywalker and show him broken, I want to see what broke him. And I don't think they showed me that enough. I want to see that. And if you'd started a trilogy with a movie all about Luke being like he was and showed what happened with him and Kylo, then I totally believe where he is. But one flashback showing me it just didn't feel it enough to get me to that point. That was my issue.
Explanation until we get to the prequel trilogy. Well, anyways.
Anyway.
So yeah, we have Yoda goes into exile. He does talk to. Let's go ahead and talk about the big fight between Obi-Wan and Anakin. Look, I know a lot of people really like this fight, but let's face it, it's a techno dance.
Yeah,
they are spinning around without the need to spin around. Literally just spinning to spin. Unlike spinning because they got hit and they're moving with the hit and spinning to expel some of that energy to propel it into an attack. No, they're just spinning.
I would say I would commend the actors for how they were able to pull off the training that they had to go through. To choreograph it. They did really well because it looks kind of as if they are really there fighting with each other, but it's too much.
It's way
far
too much. And
this is the most emotional fight that we've had
it should have been
in the prequel trilogy overall, and should be again until really the final one between Luke and Vader.
Yeah.
And yet there's just no emotion in it. There's no dialogue. I remember the producer Rick McCallum saying that the dialogue in that scene will cut as badly as the lightsabers, and I thought, oh, good, because that's what it should do. And then I watched it and thought, what were you watching, McCallum? Because there's no dialogue from the point Anakin says, "You will try." I think the next word that's sent between them is Obi-Wan saying, "I have failed you."
Yeah.
And that's on the lava pit. So everything up to them, there's not, I still think, a single bit of dialogue. That is atrocious.
Not only that, but there's actual scenes where the only thing we actually see is blue flashes of light in front of their faces. Like, I know they still had a really difficult choreograph, but as far as the way this scene was shot, there's 15, 20 seconds of this fight over a couple of shots of just blue flashes in front of faces. I can't stand this fight. I think it's the second worst fight next to Dooku and Anakin / Obi-Wan in episode 2. Yeah, I don't like this fight whatsoever.
I've got to agree with you, and it's made worse. It's the worst one because of the stakes involved. Because this should have been the thing that we were all building up to, and it just fails to deliver completely.
This should have made Maul v Obi-Wan look like a cakewalk. But
we talking through it. I want to see that, them discussing things between them at points where they stop fighting and they talk, and then they do that in movies. They'll have bits where they just stop fighting and they talk, and then something gets said and they start fighting again and they move to a different bit. I would have liked to have seen that, that the kind of dialogue builds up to that point. Even Obi-Wan getting into his head, making him angry, just kind of realizing that at some point that he can't save him and that he needs to kind of get him to defeat himself here. That's I'd like to have seen that.
Definitely. But we get to the end of this fight. We make it through this techno dance, this damn electronic dance show, and there was a line that was in the book and a line that was apparently recorded but cut out of the movie. Anakin's just lost because Obi-Wan had the high ground.
Well, we have to talk about the high ground. Surely.
Do you want to talk about the high ground?
We have to.
Go ahead. Let's talk about the high ground.
Come on. What is that all about? That has to be one of the biggest memes ever. I mean, how many times have you go onto Reddit, go onto some sort of social media, and there's somebody fighting, and then the one guy will be higher than the other, and they say, "I've got the high ground," because nobody believes that. It's stupid. Just before Anakin has jumped from that lava pit. He must have did a 100-foot jump and managed to land on one tiny little point, but yet he can't jump over the top of Obi-Wan.
Yep.
What?
No, it is
horrible way to end fight. Horrible way.
I'm always reminded of the Mythbusters episode where they were testing Star Wars myths, and the idea of the high ground was one of those ones that they tested. And I think it ended up inconclusive. Like, Jamie was just really good, and Adam wasn't that great at the lightsaber get up that they had come up with to detect hits, and the high ground really didn't affect it that much. So even without the Force, when you're talking about a sword fight, the high ground's really not going to make that much of a difference. The high ground matters when you've got ranged weapons, cannon, bows and arrows, guns, things like that.
Well, if you were fighting in an actual sword fight with someone, usually you see in sword fights someone gets the high ground and it's more difficult for the one to kind of come up at them, but that's using conventional swords with people who stand on the ground and can't jump 10 feet in the air.
Not Jedi with lightsabers and force abilities.
And force powers and all that sort of stuff. And it's not as if he's up on a balcony, he's in a hill. He's in a hill.
And I do like this, or I hate that this line was taken out though. So Anakin fails to the high ground works, and Anakin gets chopped into bits, and we end up with the loss of this line after Obi-Wan says, "I loved you." He was supposed to say, "But I will not save you," because Anakin actually reaches out. I've read that he reaches out one more time and he's like, "Please save me." And it's at that moment that Obi-Wan's like, no, I can't fucking save this motherfucker. He's gone too far. And I love that line. I loved you, but I will not save you.
But in general, that's because, anything would be better than just Obi-Wan gets him to almost kill him. His job's supposed to be to kill him. Theoretically, if he did kill him at that point, then maybe him and Yoda could have went after Palpatine because now he doesn't have Vader on his side, no apprentice, and he's he can't do it. Unlike what Windu did, or unlike what Anakin did, he can't do that. He can't just kill him. It's his friend. He's supposed to have this conflict, and that what happens in the OT ultimately should have been a result of Obi-Wan's choice, that he just couldn't strike that blow. But of course, it turns out good in the end. It's like Tolkien, the pity of Bilbo saves everybody because he spares Gollum, and then Gollum comes back to do something at the end. That the pity of Obi-Wan should have saved the galaxy for me, and they just failed to understand that bit of drama completely.
Yeah, and I think that line would have went very far, and could have even really been used to connect to A New Hope. I really do. I think emotionally connect to A New Hope and the ultimate sacrifice that Obi-Wan uses. But without that line, we just get, I hate you. Well, why? Like, I understand you're angry, but hate you to Obi-Wan carries a lot of weight with it. And I think without that line of, I loved you, but I will not save you, I don't think I hate you makes as much sense. And I think we lose out on some great emotional weight.
Absolutely.
Agree. I really wish they would have left that line in the movie. The movie ends. We get two, we'll say three major scenes left. We get the birth of Luke and Leia and the loss of the will to live. Some people have said that.
This is one of my big bugbears as well.
Okay, so because where do you let me pose it this way? Where do you fall in on Padme's death? Okay, has she lost the will to live? Was it Anakin choking her, or did Palpatine drain her life force? Go.
Well, this is a medical droid saying that she's basically what they're saying, and I think Lucas has even commented on this, as she dies of a broken heart. Now, I know it's fantasy, I know it's supposed to be romantic, but people don't actually die of broken hearts. They may die just after something like that, and people say, "Oh, they died of a broken heart," but that's not usually the cause.
There is a condition. I might be saying it wrong, but Tokosoba cardiomyopathy. Tokosoba, something similar to that, cardiomyopathy. Look it up. It was actually used in an episode of Scrubs. It's known as broken heart syndrome. It is common, especially in elderly people, to suffer from a cardiomyopathy, heart failure, after the loss of a loved one, but it doesn't happen in a matter of hours. It takes weeks to months to maybe even a couple of years.
And in my opinion, but then I'm a absolute sort of science is everything kind of person. I don't believe in kind of things like that. My opinion is we just don't fully understand the process. It could be a release of chemicals in the brain, which, kind of start that. But it tends to happen amongst the elderly people anyway, who might have a bad ticket anyway. Look, it's as simple as this. What should have happened in this scene, and it would have provided great drama, is the droid should have turned around and said, there is a problem here. We have a choice. We can save the kids, or we can save Padme. Someone needs to make that choice, and have a scene where Obi-Wan and Yoda actually have to sit and debate this and work out which they're going to choose, and they choose the kids. That would have been drama.
Oh,
and
yeah.
What we get is absolute trash.
There's definitely better ways to do it, but
so easy. Just you could literally have just filmed that scene better. There you go. It's a better film. You put that scene in the end of it. It gives consequence to what happens.
Yeah, but the scene happens, and we get what we get. We get Luke and Leia. And we know they get split up, or Bail Organa takes one of them. Obi-Wan says, hey, I'll take one to Tatooine to be with his family, which made no sense whatsoever, because if I'm Darth Vader and I know there's even the potential that Padme gave birth. That I'm a Dark Lord of Sith, and I know Sith like to lie, so my master may have lied to me. I'm gonna go check just in case. All of a sudden,
why would you check there though? I actually think it's genius.
I think Vader would have checked with especially.
I think, given everything that's happened, the last thing Darth Vader would ever want to do is go back to Tatooine, where his mother came from.
I don't think he would
early life was, because he wants to forget all that. He's just angry now.
I don't know. I think maybe he even goes back to destroy it, or goes back to take out anger on you. Let her be captured. You let her be taken by the Tusken Raiders. You let her be taken by the Sand People. Something. I don't know. I have this feeling that Vader would have had a reason, an inkling from the Force.
I think
something would have led him back, and it made no sense to me the way that they did it to put Luke
I think it makes sense that he feels some sort of connection with that. But he actually did care for the Lars, or he should have cared for the Lars. Maybe he didn't express that enough in Attack of the Clones, but he should have. And because they did free his mum, he went away and left her at the end of the day, and he actually freed her and married her. He freed her and married her. Well, hand me a bit of that. So for me, it would have made sense that he wouldn't want to think about those connections, the love, the family that he's got somewhere, and that he would feel some sort of connection with that. So I actually think it was a good place to hide Luke. So
we'll disagree, and it's my show, so you're wrong. No, but we get to the very last part here. The second to last part is the scene with Yoda and Obi-Wan talking about Force ghosts being a way to immortality, that Qui-Gon has found a way to commune with the living. How do you? I take issue with that idea that Force ghosts are a form of immortality, and part of that comes from being informed by the EU, where Force ghosts are a completely different thing, and it's not a forever. At least in the EU, it wasn't a forever opportunity. It could be temporary, as far as a few days, a few weeks, a few months. It could be a few years. It kind of depended on Jedi.
There would also be ghosts would come back for thousands of years later,
and there could be some that would come back for thousands of years. Exactly.
This is one of the ways I did not like the EU, the way that they handled Force ghosts, and they also had Sith Force ghosts as well. And I think it works out the way that it does in the movies, in terms of the Sith are trying to be immortal. The whole thing about Darth Plagueis, save everybody for dying. They're trying to stay alive. They're clinging on to life, whereas the Jedi are happy to let it go. But if you have love and you have connection, see, this works in my head canon, right? If you have love towards someone, connections, which the Jedi don't really do, then you'll still care about them enough that you can actually appear back to them, because you've still get that connection into the real world again. And that's what Qui-Gon had, that connection with Anakin, and that's what allowed him to bring back, and he learned how to do it. And Yoda had that connection eventually with Luke, and probably Obi-Wan as well. And Obi-Wan had the kind of connection with Luke. He spent his whole life watching him and everything like that. So it makes sense that they can come back to the people that matter to them.
I think Force ability, actual power, because you got like you said, Sith, like Exar Kun or Exar Kun, however you want to pronounce it, in the Jedi Academy trilogy, which is not that great of a book series, but he's a big Force ghost on the dark side that gets to come back and influence other Jedi. I kind of like the idea of it being a Force ability, kind of similar to flow walking, which is something that Jason Solo does later on, which is almost like time travel, but it's more like watching a replay of it, and maybe being able to leave an artifact, not a physical artifact, but like an artifact on the tape that somebody in the past could see. But I don't know. I don't like the idea of it being this immortality thing, and I like it being connected more to just this ability. But then and Yoda Force
says,
power.
This is, and he says it in Empire Strikes Back, which how more canon can you get than Empire Strikes Back?
Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter.
Yeah,
that
absolutely
that tells you right there. Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. It's just that's just a temporary form for you.
It's all connected to their power, the Force power,
as an afterlife. Well, I always thought that the way they're saying it is there is an afterlife. All spirits go to the afterlife, but only Jedi with enough strength in it can can kind of come back again. But as Luke says in the new ones, no one's ever really gone because,
they don't know which way they want to go.
They have an afterlife in the Star Wars universe. I'm an atheist. I don't believe in an afterlife in the real world, but, I do in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, which is fine. I get the idea. Me and you are completely in agreement that there is a form of afterlife, but this idea that it's immortality, and I don't know. I just didn't kind of like the way they were explaining it in the prequels. I kind of like the way it's explained in the sequel trilogy. Nobody has ever really gone. I kind of like that, but I like it being tied to a person's kind of their capabilities within the Force more than just a specific Jedi trait or being connected to worldly connections.
For me, it also goes back to like other big myths like Tolkien, even Harry Potter, if you want to go for something a little bit more modern. But he used the classic one in Tolkien. The idea was that, when people died, they were kind of going to a better place. And when spirits passed away, like Gandalf and Saruman are spirits, then they would go back to the west to where they were supposed to come from. But when they had turned to evil, they couldn't do that anymore. So like when Saruman dies in the books, there's a shadow appears and it turns towards the west, and a swift cold wind comes and blows it away, as if to say, you can't go that way. And the same thing happened with sort of similar to Sauron, that he can't go back west as well. So he's lost his chance at immortality by trying to hold on to everything in the world itself. And I actually think there's a lot of similarities between the old trilogy and Tolkien as well. I think Lucas maybe got a bit of influence out of that, and I kind of like that viewpoint that they use, I suppose, for the whole kind of immortality thing. So I don't like the fact of the Sith being immortal. I like it being it's a kind of irony that the Jedi have found something that the Sith could never have. They can never have that because they can't love. They can't have that kind of connection. They've given all that up.
I don't know. I would wager that Sith are more capable of love than Jedi were, because Sith are all about emotions and connecting to self-gratification, and love is a very self-gratifying emotion.
But is it not?
And the Jedi even
should also be a selfless thing, that you would
maybe
do, you would
potentially
help, it kind of depends on the other person that wouldn't necessarily help.
But you get something out of it. I mean, me and you are both married and have children. Do we not get a lot of joy out of doing something for our spouses?
Yeah, sometimes you have to do things as well that wouldn't necessarily please you, because it would make them happy, and you're happy when it makes them happy. I don't see a Sith thinking like that. I see a Sith thinking, well, you are no longer any use to me, so
I know in the EU and technically in the prequel trilogy, that the Jedi are supposed to turn away from love in that type of form. But you have a lot of Sith in the EU
problem
wives
the
and
prequel
stuff.
trilogy had. This is what we should have learned in the prequel trilogy. This is why the Jedi failed. This is why they failed to help Anakin, because the advice Yoda gives Anakin, just let go of everything, it's wrong. And there is no way that that's what they teach Luke like. They just don't teach Luke about that. Luke cares about his friends. Yoda, does say to them, if you honour what they fight for, you may have to kind of give them up, that's fine, that's sacrifice. But ultimately, it's Luke's desire not to give up his dad, which turns the entire trilogy around in his head. That's the whole point of to me, the 6 stories, that Luke, with proper training, after Yoda and Obi-Wan have learned all this, learns what it is to really be a Jedi, and that he wouldn't be limited by not being able to love people, do what you need to do, love, just, you just have to be aware of the dark side as well. There'll always be that temptation to the dark side, but if you're strong enough, you can resist it.
Well, definitely. I mean, look, in the EU and potentially in the sequel trilogy, the new canon, Luke definitely changes a lot of things from the old Jedi Order and has relationships, encourages other Jedi to have relationships, encourages strong connections to other Jedi and non-Jedi. So yeah, I get that.
Most of that was written before the prequel trilogy, and he brought in the celibacy thing. And I know it's not celibacy, it's attachment, but you get the idea that they're supposed to be these basically celibate monks. I don't think that was the right choice to make, but I think if you're going to do that, you then have to show why that was what was wrong with them and what
Me and
changed
you
their
will
else. What did the
completely
Jedi
agree.
do wrong? Were they just in the wrong place at the wrong time? They'd been going for thousands of years. The Sith obviously killed themselves through their own greed and desire to be on top and everything like that until
Although
there
they
was
were
only
hanging out on
two left.
Korriban. So. But yeah, me and you do agree that there was a lot of things that weren't explained enough or properly. And then let's go ahead and talk about the very, very last thing I want to point out. We see Bail Organa hand 3PO and R2-D2 off to Captain Antilles, and this is like 18 years before A New Hope. And so I would really hope that this Captain Antilles would not still just be a captain after nearly 2 decades of service. But he hands.
That's as far as you can get in the running, the blockade pilot industry. You work up to captain, you're at the top of your trade,
Maybe, I don't know, but it was a way to connect it to A New Hope when 3PO tells Luke our last owner was Captain Antilles. But he tells him to wipe the protocol droid's mind, but not R2's, which makes no sense because R2 is definitely capable of not only being translated by a protocol droid, but he's also able of displaying information through screens and holograms. So you would definitely want to wipe both fucking memories. It made no sense to just be like, let's wipe 3PO.
It kind of made sense as to why. I thought it was kind of cool and that R2 might well know everything that's going on in the sequel trilogy, but just doesn't communicate it to anybody because maybe he can't put the connections together because it's the way he thinks. But 3PO would just blot out everything, wouldn't he?
I don't know.
He's just a talk machine. So
R2 was Anakin's personal astromech droid. I would definitely want to wipe that droid's brain and not have him any connections to fucking.
Fair, that R2-D2 does not know really that Anakin's Darth Vader. He goes in to see Palpatine, he comes back out, they go to Mustafar, he goes in, kills some people, tells R2 to wait where he is. Then, for some reason, R2 knows him and Obi-Wan go away off fighting. Then Obi-Wan comes back on his own and he leaves with them. As far as, Obi-Wan's not going to sit and then explain it to R2. Okay, R2, so listen, this is what happened to Anakin. So he doesn't really fully know the picture of what's going on at that point,
Maybe not 100%, but he does have a baseline bit of information as far as who Anakin is and some of the stuff that has happened. Maybe not all the specifics, but he could definitely connect the dots as he keeps
one
his
of the
memory.
rumors about Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, is that R2 is going to bring back 3PO's memories for some reason because he has some memory that they need to know or something like that. That's a rumor, but I have no idea whether it's true.
Do you I want to just caveat off of that or dovetail off of that. I think 3PO and R2 have been completely just underutilized in the sequel trilogy. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. They obviously did. It's one of the kind of things that's kind of followed its way through all the trilogies, and I don't think maybe J.J. Abrams didn't particularly like 3PO.
I don't know.
But
they didn't need to be a big
is
part,
one of the
but
things
they needed some part.
See, to be fair, if it wasn't for Rian Johnson, now I'm not a big fan of Rian Johnson, but if it wasn't for him, BB-8 would have been on Act 2 with Luke, not R2. Johnson actually asked them to switch it over at the end so that R2 was with him. So obviously, J.J. Abrams really just doesn't give a shit about R2. He just has no interest in him. He just made him a statue in the corner at some point. But I think that is a shame,
Yeah, like I said, they don't need to be a huge part of the sequel trilogy, but they definitely should have been some part of it.
R2's almost like the hero of the first 6 episodes. Whenever the good guys are in trouble, there'll be an R2 rescue scene, won't there? I mean, one of my favourite scenes in Empire Strikes Back is when everything's going bad for them, until R2 shows up. 2 minutes later, he's got the door open, he fogs the corridor, they're all running away, the music flares.
They definitely
and R2 just comes out, and away he goes. He fixes a hyperdrive, he's the hero.
They definitely use R2 a hell of a lot better than having him spew oil over a bunch of battle droids and light it on fire with jets that we've never seen in the original trilogy.
I mean, this is them trying to use him in that way in the prequel trilogy and failing badly.
Yeah, exactly.
But in the sequel trilogy, they seem to have just went, well, the kind of prequels didn't use him very well, so we just won't use him in this one. That's what I kind of feel
they could have made up for some of the shitty stuff from the prequel trilogy.
They didn't need to have 3PO in it that much, I don't think, but R2 should have been a bigger part of this sequel trilogy for me.
So let's go ahead and answer the last few questions. Those of you that have been following along for the other two episodes of the Last Call podcast, we have some talking points, some questions that we answer about each of these movies. Who was, in your opinion, the strongest actor for this movie?
Ian McDiarmid.
Okay. Me and you differ a little bit. Go ahead. Explain.
I just think he's not given that much to do until this movie. As I said, when he starts getting to be a bit darker and a bit evil, Lucas's writing of the Emperor character and the words he uses is more impressive than the way he writes Palpatine. So I just think, as he's pushing and making that turn, I just like everything pretty much McDiarmid does. I don't think he really puts much effort wrong. It's not his fault with the whole face melty thing.
Yeah.
You have to watch him. He's acting really, really well in that whole Darth Plagueis scene. As I said before, he's got nothing else on the other side of him. That's not his fault, but he's really kind of chewing the scenery at that bit, and I like that. It's a bit overacting, but that's him becoming the Emperor, and I like that. It's a very caricature performance. So you make that for me.
I still give it to the same guy I gave it to for episode 2, Ewan McGregor, and it's because other than that scene where he's talking about he slaughtered younglings, I think he does a great job. I really like his interactions in the opening battle. He actually has emotion and in a legitimate response to the fact that he's in a fight. Weakest actor. We never
talked about it, but I actually really liked with the end of the General Grievous when he picks up the blaster and shoots him, and then he looks at it so uncivilized.
So uncivilized.
That's a nice little fan throwback, but it works with the character. It's fan service that works. And we see lots of fan service that doesn't work. So
absolutely. Weakest actor for me, once again, Portman. I actually think because there's a couple of moments that I think there's a couple more moments that Anakin does better versus I didn't actually like Anakin and Portman on the balcony when she's brushing her hair and stuff like that. I still didn't like her acting in that. So for me, weakest actor is Portman. So who was it for you?
Tricky. Because I said, obviously, I think you said Christensen in Attack of the Clones, and I said Portman. And, it's so close between the two because, as we said in that one, Hayden has all the weight on him. This is him turning to the dark side. It's the whole movie is about him. And I think until he starts getting evil, at the turn, his acting's not too bad. But before it and after it, it's pretty shocking. So I'm going to switch it around this time and say Christensen this time because Padma's in it less. She's a very secondary character in this film. She doesn't really appear that much, I will agree. He's in almost every scene. The whole movie revolves around about him.
I just hated every scene she was in.
Yeah, which is fair enough.
Yeah. All right, and best scene for the movie?
Darth Plagueis the Wise.
Okay. You explained it quite well. I actually like the opening scene and a majority of the rescue minus the talking, and a couple of the small things. But I think the opening scene is a lot of real fun. That's what I went with. Worst scene in the movie. Go ahead.
There are so many. I'm really struggling with this one. I think I'm going to have to go with, I think, just overall the fight between Anakin and Obi-Wan, and that'll be hugely controversial to some people, but there's about just 10 minutes of dead cinema there for me with just flashing lights on it. From the moment, as I said, says you will try, to the point, I failed you, Anakin. there's just no talking in that at all, and it's just, to me, I just get bored watching it. You know, I know what's going to happen. It's just a boring fight because there's no emotion or no drama towards it. There's nothing particularly cool happens. They jump about a bit, some scenery goes blim, blim, blim. I hate it. You know, it's just the worst lightsaber fight of the whole 6, 7, 8 movies that have been out so far for me.
Nice. And I happen to absolutely agree. For me, it was that, or it was the waiting between being sent away, you know, hey, you're not going to come with us to arrest Palpatine, to where he shows up. That whole scene, you kind of explained it a little bit better. I still think it could have been done better, but I hate that fucking lightsaber fight, and I agree, the lack of dialogue is just atrocious. And what's the one thing that you would do to make this movie better?
I would rub it out and start again. I mean, at this point, you're in the third part, so we've talked previously about what I would do to fix the Phantom Menace, what have they done to fix the Attack of the Clones.
Yep.
But I think there isn't really a way you can fix Revenge of the Sith that much and have it make sense to follow the 2 ones that came before it. You have to fix them first before you get to Sith. And for me, while Sith probably is this slight better of them all, it's because of the kind of content that's in it. It's the stuff I was expecting to see. So for me, it's literally rub it out and start again at that point. And Sith, there's some good bits in it, but they don't fit with everything that's came before, or they're not good enough to excuse all the badness that's come before us.
I literally wrote down Cam's time shift idea should have had more Vader.
yeah. We should have been further into it at that point. Vader could have turned far earlier in the third movie. They should have been building up to that point. You know, the Palpatine reveal, all that sort of stuff should have happened in the second film. You know. So that we were kind of getting to that point earlier, so that we could have saw a bit more of what was kind of going on. You know, just the kind of, there's things that happen that just needed more time in that film, and they don't have enough time because either what's come before, or that they just waste time in the movie doing the wrong things that don't mean anything. Too many long action scenes that don't go anywhere. You know,
definitely. Well, dude, thank you so much for joining me today. That's going to conclude our review of Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. And man, did we talk for a long time. There's a lot to discuss in this movie, and I have a feeling that Return of the Jedi and Episode 9 are both going to run longer than the previous 2 movies for each one of those trilogies.
Yeah, I mean, I think Episode 9 probably will, because it'll come on to everything, you know, it'll be the entire saga. So we have to think about the prequels, we have to think about the old trilogy and how it all makes sense. So we think we've never seen it, but
that's going to be a long
night. And then our
night.
own feelings about whether we like the movie or not. It's going to be a long.
That's going to be a long night, because
I think this one was like the recap of the prequel trilogy, so we'll explore all the ideas of this trilogy,
and Jedi's going to be the same. Yeah. And for those of you that don't know, when we get to December, it's actually going to be a preview night podcast. It's going to take some logistical planning for us, but we're going to get you guys our immediate reactions to the Rise of Skywalker the day of preview night releases, at least me and Cam, as well as hopefully up to 3 additional people. And we're going to do about 20 minutes of spoiler-free kind of reaction to just that movie, just to Episode 9, and then we're gonna give you guys a spoiler warning, and then we're gonna go straight into it and fucking dig into that shit like there's no fucking tomorrow. And we encourage you guys to
be a long one.
We encourage you guys to listen to that first 20 minutes before you see the movie, if you haven't seen it by the time the podcast comes out, and then push pause or mark, hey, 20 minutes and 53 seconds, and come back and listen to the spoiler stuff. Make sure you guys are liking, sharing, and subscribing one more time to the Los Fanboys channel wherever you get your podcasts. You should have LRMonline.com as your homepage. I mean, there's just no reason for it not to be your homepage. There are amazing writers here on our staff, and they are putting out great content every single day. Make sure you guys are checking out the LRM YouTube channel. We have LRM Ranks It. We have, I believe we're going to have a couple more shows coming up here in the near future. We have A-class celebrity interviews from contributors like Gig. There's a lot of content on the website, so make sure you guys are checking it all out. Cam, where can people find you at online?
Yeah, so you can get me at cam@lrmonline.com is my email address, and my Twitter handle is at @LRM_cam, I believe. I'm not very good with knowing what these things are, but I have occasionally actually engaged people on Twitter these days now, so
nice.
I'm getting there.
Getting there. You guys can find me at that Kyle Malone on Twitter, as well as I host LRM Ranks It. The videos come out on Tuesday. The podcast comes out on Wednesday. They are completely different things. Go ahead and check those out. And I write the Cantina, a Star Wars column, every Thursday. And yeah, and I write all the weekend stuff for LRMonline.com. Next month, we're going to be discussing Solo, a Star Wars story, which is something I absolutely hate. We're going to be with Nick Dahl, who absolutely loves the film. Yeah. And Cam will kind of be mediating. It'll be a very interesting one. Yeah, he's kind of in the middle. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will talk to you next time. May the Force be with you.